Today's book review is brought to you by Audible. You can listen to Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil for free by clicking on the link in the description or by texting Star Wars Explained to 500 500. Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil by Timothy Zahn comes out today. With the Grand Admiral set to make his live-action debut, the character is about to get more attention than ever before. So how does the final book in the Ascendancy Trilogy measure up to the several other Thrawn stories? Here are my spoiler-free thoughts. It landed right down the middle for me. I loved the Legends Thrawn books back in the day. I really loved the first canon Thrawn novel. Alliances and Treason didn't do it for me so much because they felt too boxed in, taking place during the events of Star Wars Rebels. Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising felt like a step in the right direction, allowing Zahn to tell a more substantial story that wasn't constrained by surrounding material. But then I thought the second novel, Greater Good, was kinda boring. I wasn't following it very well, and while I have plenty of criticisms for Lesser Evil, it brought everything in the Ascendancy trilogy full circle. These three books felt like a proper trilogy more than the first three canon Thrawn books, which felt like three tenuously connected stories that involved Thrawn. I started Lesser Evil fairly skeptical, but the deeper I got into the story, the more I enjoyed it. I think Zahn had something he wanted to say, and he said it well by using the Chiss. Isolation leads to downfall. The Ascendancy is the strongest force in the unknown regions, and they plan to keep it that way by securing their borders and not getting involved with anyone else. They are hesitant to help their neighbors, they don't share their technology. Basically, they're selfish, which is the nature of the dark side, and I think Zahn does a great job at exploring the morality of Star Wars in a story that does not involve the Force all that much. I also like that the problem isn't just the Chiss Ascendancy as a faction, but also the families that make up that faction. There are 9 ruling families and 40 major families, and then countless other families that all want to improve their status, and so they all become selfish and untrusting. They don't share with each other. Again, that's all very dark side inspired, and we see that the selfishness of isolation doesn't stay isolated. Selfishness is pervasive and will invade other areas of life, not just the areas where it was deemed necessary. Unfortunately, the politics of it all can be difficult to follow. Chiss culture is just downright confusing with all the family names and ranks. Chiss names start to become white noise because a lot of them are very similar. For example, all myth names start with TH. Thrawn, Thras, Thalius, Thurfian. Now multiply that by 9 families. I was able to pick up and remember the more important characters, but if a minor one popped up suddenly, I'd have to remind myself who they were. Some characters even change their names over the course of the 3 books to add to the confusion. That alone is a lot to keep straight in your head, but then mix in the ranking order of family members, which families are allied with who, and so on. I couldn't keep up with it all, and I know some of the overall story of this trilogy was likely lost on me. That said, the characters that I was able to keep track of I enjoyed quite a bit. Thalius' relationship with the Skywalker Sherry was a highlight of all 3 books, and Lesser Evil was no exception. There are also a bunch of flashback or memory chapters that cover Thrawn's friendship with Thras, who was a major character in the Legends book Outbound Flight. I loved those flashback chapters, so much so that I was frustrated they weren't the entire book. I found I enjoyed the story most when it got more intimate with its characters. Reading about Thrawn and Thras working together to solve problems and becoming best friends was a lot more fun than zooming way out to see the Ascendancy families bickering with each other, even if I did appreciate the messaging behind it all. Maybe these books were just trying to do too much for my taste. There are a lot of Chiss characters, obviously, and many of them are antagonistic. Then each book had a unique threat from the unknown regions that were all being controlled by the Grisk. And I like the Grisk as villains, don't get me wrong, but I wish we learned more about them. I feel like we've been teased with them since Thrawn Alliances, and I am intrigued, but I'm ready for more. This is certainly the most we've been allowed to see them so far, and the fights with them are cool. Zahn has always been very skilled at writing cool and unique space battles, but I'm ready for the Grisk to take center stage. I'm not expecting that to happen in live action or anything, but the next time they appear in the books, I hope they are a more present threat. And with that, I think I need to talk about Thrawn's future. Will there be more Thrawn books? I expect so, but we've got to see what they do with him in live action first. I've talked quite a bit about how I feel Thrawn's characterization has been inconsistent between the books and Star Wars Rebels. We learn that Thrawn ruthlessly bombed a city full of civilians and rebels, and then Zahn writes a book that says, no, that was someone else. He's a villain in Rebels and more of a hero in the books. I'm glad to say that Lesser Evil addressed that a bit. Thrawn's allies are taken aback by him a couple of times when he says that he will go to any length to protect the Ascendancy. I wouldn't say he crosses any lines in this book, but the signs are there. He basically talks about wanting to use the powers of the Chiss Force-using navigators to see, anticipate, and control the future. Trying to control what can't be controlled is definitely some dark side behavior. There's the looming threat of a superweapon in the story that I won't get into now, but it's pretty telling of Thrawn's character. And of course, we know that he ultimately does join the Empire and makes a deal with the literal devil of the Star Wars universe. It's all under the rationalization of necessity and protection, but it doesn't matter if you go to the dark side for good intentions, it will consume you. I've been guessing that Thrawn will be treated as a villain when he appears in live action, and I think Zahn did enough character work in the Ascendancy Trilogy that if that happens, it won't feel so inconsistent. I also think that if Thrawn is a villain, and if his fate remains the same as it did in Legends, there is plenty of potential to continue exploring the Chiss Ascendancy. Alliances and treason established, the Grisk threat is still out there. All three of the Ascendancy books established several protégés for Thrawn. His actions affect military and political leaders, so if he winds up dead in the upcoming live-action series, I don't think the Chiss storyline will be dropped. We could get a Thrawn Legacy trilogy or something following Admiral Ar'alani and Eli Vanto and any number of other characters. I think Zahn sprinkled in several options for himself while we wait and see what happens to the Grand Admiral. Personally, I think he works best as a villain, a looming threat. Even though Thrawn might be my favorite book about the character, I have preferred his Legends depiction over canon for the most part. Or it might be more accurate to say I prefer reading about him at that part of his life after Return of the Jedi. So, who would I recommend this book to? Obviously, Thrawn lovers. If you loved all the other Thrawn books, you're going to like this one too. If you're like me and haven't been as drawn into the past few stories, not a lot has changed for lesser evil. I'll also say that if you haven't given the Ascendancy books a shot, but you really like it when Star Wars leans more into science fiction than science fantasy, you'd probably enjoy these. I like my Star Wars to be more fantasy, but there's plenty of room for both. If you're interested in listening to Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil, check it out on Audible, who sponsored today's video. Audible is a leading provider of audio content and is a service we use all the time because we go through a lot of Star Wars audiobooks. I love all the Star Wars audiobooks because they're big productions with music and sound effects, so it's like listening to a movie, and Mark Thompson does a particularly great job as the voice of Thrawn. You can get Lesser Evil right now by visiting www.audible.com/Star Wars Explained or by texting Star Wars Explained to 500-500. And Audible is currently running a special deal. Save 46% on your first 4 months of Audible. That's only $7.95 a month. If you sign up today, you'll get a credit for an audiobook of any price and full access to the Plus catalog. The Plus catalog contains thousands of select audiobooks, podcasts, Audible originals, and more. Once you get an audiobook or audio drama, it will always be yours. You own that piece of content even if you cancel your membership, and if you get an audiobook you don't like, you can swap it out thanks to Audible's Great Listen Guarantee, which gives you up to a year to exchange an audiobook you didn't like for one you're excited to keep. That offer lasts for as long as you're a member. You can start listening to Lesser Evil, or the other Thrawn books, or any of the other canon Star Wars novels, which all have audiobooks right now. If you've been wanting to get into Star Wars audiobooks, the holiday season is the perfect time to start. Start listening right now. For a limited time, save 46% on your first 4 months of Audible, only $7.95 a month. Give yourself the gift of listening. For more, go to audible.com/Star Wars Explained or text Star Wars Explained to 500-500. But that's it for today. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out our Patreon page where we're going to have a book club discussion all about Lesser Evil. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.